were so proud to have served our country. There was nothing that we could have done that would have pleased us more.
I think every 16, 17-year-old kid in 1945, they wanted to get in the service, help, do what you could, and be part of patriotism.
People need to know that immigrants like Hua Ting Wong were ready to step up and fight for their newfound country.
We thought we did the best we can to show that we were loyal Americans and deserve to be called Americans.
I was an American to those people, not Latin American or Mexican American or whatever. He called me American, and that's what I was proud of.
I definitely felt that I made the right move in volunteering because it was for peace.
I'm Yosho Nakamura, 95 years of age. I served in the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the most decorated unit in U.S. military history. I served in France and Italy during the war. Japanese Americans were first considered enemy aliens, so we were stripped of our civil rights as citizens. We were interned and were in prison. Here we were behind barbed wire and asked if we were willing to serve in the United States Armed Forces. And when I said yes, I figured I was volunteering and left the Gila River concentration camp to Fort Douglas, Utah. We were shipped on these little boats called Victory ships. I was a private first class, and I served in the 3rd Battalion in M Company, which is a heavy weapons company. My task was to carry ammunition for mortars. When we landed in Italy, we were sent to Mount Folgorito because there were enemy outposts up on top of the mountain. The mountain is very steep, and the German troops never thought that we would be dumb enough to try to climb the mountain. The troops in the Po Valley could not move forward or north for 6 months. So that's why General Mark Clark asked the 442nd to come back. And we climbed Mount Folgorito in total darkness and in silence, on these very narrow pathways going up the mountain. The 442nd men didn't know the word impossible, and that was a great inspiration for me. Probably the most scary moment in my life was climbing that mountain. There were people who slipped off the cliff and they could not make any noise, and they went to their death as a result. Because any kind of noise would alert the outposts up above. And I thought I may not make it myself. So tired and really afraid. That's the reason why the 100th Battalion and the 442nd Regiment were known as Go for Broke, because they did everything possible to reach their objectives. We made it up to the top of the mountain and surprised the outpost, and we moved up all the way to Genoa. And by that time, the war in Europe was ending, and there was a great celebration in Genoa. When I returned from the war, I felt that we, Japanese Americans and myself, had tried our very best to do what we could to win the war. My loyalty to the country never wavered. I never did stop loving our country. I felt that even more loyalty to the country because so many of us gave so much that we thought we did the best we can to show that we were loyal Americans and deserve to be called Americans.
Well, my name is Theodore G. Lumkin, Jr. I served in World War II as a intelligence officer for the 100 Fighter Squadron. And today I'm 100 years old. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I was drafted, went to Fort MacArthur here in Los Angeles, San Pedro, California. From there, I was sent to Tuskegee, was trained there, and graduated as a second lieutenant there in January of 1943. I was a part of the 100 Fighter Squadron of the 332nd Fighter Group. The 332nd Fighter Group was all black. You know, the military was segregated at that time during World War II. And so I was excited and interested in doing two things. Number one, contributing to winning the war, and two, hopefully improving a lot of Negroes in this country. Went overseas in a convoy of, must have been about 50 ships, I guess. And took us about almost a month to get across the Atlantic to Italy. My role basically was an intelligence officer for the 100 Fighter Squadron, which consisted primarily of briefing and debriefing pilots regarding the missions that they were about to take and what to expect. On the 24th of March 1945. The mission was to escort the bombers to the target in Berlin to try and really knock Germany out of the war. Our fighters encountered the Me-262 fighter jets at the Germans' hand. Germans were they were ahead of us in terms of jet fighters, but our pilots were able to knock 3 of those Me-262s down, and it was a good day and a bad day because we did lose pilots on that mission also. But it was ultimately a very successful mission. Where the war ended, it was a glorious day. It meant that we didn't have to worry about continuing the war. I'm proud to be a veteran. This is a highlight and still is one of the emotional highlights for me because I was there and I'll never forget it.
My name is Ruth Engelmann, and I'm 99 years old. I served as first lieutenant in World War II.
Mel Engelmann, and I served in as a lieutenant commander assigned to the Marine Corps. I'm 99 years old. How long have we been married?
71 years. I graduated from Mount Auburn School of Nursing in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I went on from there to become a member of the Army Nurse Corps.
I was approximately 20 years old when I joined the war effort. I graduated from dental school, and everybody planned to serve in the military at the time.
I was sent overseas with my nursing contingent, and we had a big Army hospital, and we settled in Liège, Belgium. I was a surgical nurse, and I took care of patients who had surgery and needed surgical work done on them. And a lot of them came in, you didn't know whether they were going to live or die, so you just did the best you could. There was a man named Frank who went to high school with me. He came into the hospital with very severe injuries and eventually succumbed to these injuries. But before he did, we were both so close that it was very difficult to take, because not only do you take care of the sickest patients, but you also you have to be with them when they die.
I admired her war effort, and the fact that she had 3 battle stars on her European medal convinced me that she was not a dilly-dally, and I should get married with her.
My name is Joe Edson. I'm 92 years old. I served in World War II when I was 17, right after my 17th birthday. And my first trip was on a victory ship that went to Okinawa during the invasion. I went to sea during World War II in 1945. I just had my 17th birthday, and I dropped out of high school in order to go help win the war. You could get into the Merchant Marine when you were 16. Everybody wanted to get in the service during World War II. And I was an ordinary seaman. That's as low as you get on the ship, and you did what you were told. You didn't do a lot other than stand watch and look out. I went down to the Union Hall, and the board was just full of jobs, and the dispatcher says, "This is the job you're going on." And it happened to be the ship that went from Los Angeles to San Francisco and back to Los Angeles and then to Okinawa. I was really excited when we were underway and fairly close to Okinawa, but we were still underway. And sitting on the bow on lookout with my feet dangling over the side, and I watched the porpoise go by, and you could see them. We were escorted by a DE, a destroyer escort, and all of a sudden I heard the sirens going over on their ship, and that detected a submarine apparently, and the submarine fired at us, and we turned and did the zigzag courses that nothing hit us, but what I thought was a porpoise was probably 2 torpedoes that went by. When we were at anchor in Okinawa, we got air hit by kamikaze planes every night, and shot at by kamikaze planes. My ship didn't get hit. They put all this smoke so they couldn't see the ships at anchor. There's a lot of ships at anchor. I think they lost over 40 ships in Okinawa in that area. I was there for months. I was a little over 3 months. the kamikaze planes they really lit up the sky, and I had to get out on deck and watch it. And the captain just almost had a fit, get off the deck. And they dropped the bombs, and the first bomb, we heard about it and everything, and then when they dropped the second bomb, that they said, that Japan had agreed to a surrender, and there was more action after the surrender because every gun in Okinawa, our guns were celebrating. That was a big celebration. Then we went back to San Francisco, and I got off. The merchant seaman just walked down the gangway and went home. The next 18 months I spent in the Air Force Band and got out, and that made me a veteran. And think about it, would I do anything any different? The only thing I would have done different was get in earlier if I could have. I think every 16, 17-year-old kid in 1945, they wanted to get in the service. You wanted to get in and help, do what you could, and be part of patriotism.
Well, Hua Ting-Long was born in a town in Canton, China. He came to America in August of 1936, arrived here in Los Angeles. He was compelled to sign up for the draft. He was sent overseas, sent over to a staging area out in the Pacific, and while he was there at the staging area, he was assigned to a destroyer escort, the USS Fair. And here's a young boy that left China to come here to the US to find a new life, winds up going back out into the Pacific, fighting for a country that he had just come to, and makes great sacrifices. Wound up at the Battle of Okinawa, which was a fierce battle, kamikaze planes trying to bomb the ships. After Hua Ting-Long got out of the Navy, spent essentially the rest of his working life as a welder, got married. They had 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. There are about 20,000 Chinese Americans, men and women, that fought for the U.S. during World War II. Some of them were born here, but many of them were immigrants. People need to know that immigrants like Hua Ting-Long were ready to step up and fight for their newfound country. Motomu Nakasako, nicknamed Moat, was born here in LA, 1924, to Japanese immigrant parents. He and his family were removed to one of the relocation camps. They wound up in Heart Mountain, Wyoming. At age 20, he being a U.S. citizen, he had to register for the draft. And in 1944, he and 10 others were inducted into the Army. He got assigned to an all-Nisei outfit with all Japanese Americans. That regimental combat team, the 442nd, called Go for Broke, was already in Europe, already fighting, and so Moat and other young men of his age that got inducted at that time were sent to Europe as replacements. When the call for service came to them, they didn't hesitate at all, and they went ahead and they served their country. Moat fought in Europe and southern France and Italy and Germany, came back to the States in '45, got involved with Veterans Affairs through the American Legion, the VFW, finds a calling to help serve other veterans, and becomes a veteran service officer and joins the county and becomes the director of the Military and Veterans Affairs. To go through that life experience, be sent to the relocation camps, but yet had no hesitation to serve, and then have the realization and the desire to serve other veterans and to work his way up through the department. I think that's very significant, and it speaks a lot to his dedication to veterans. And there was a very small select group of about 400 that we don't hear too much about. Highly classified program, very specialized, and these are the Navajo code talkers. The Navajo code talking concept was originated by Mr. Philip Johnston, who was a civil engineer working for the city of LA. He's a World War I veteran. He was familiar with Native American code talking from World War I, and he thought that that could be reapplied to World War II, and more specifically, using the unwritten Navajo language. This method of spoken-only code put the Americans at a great advantage. All other codes wind up being messages sent electronically, and they can all be deciphered. But by taking Navajo words and assigning English equivalent words to them, and giving meaning to those words, the Navajo code talkers were able to verbally share messages back and forth within minutes that were coded and unbreakable.
My name is Dolores Dupree Hickenbottom. My sister-in-law was Verda May Hickenbottom Arnold. She served in World War II. She served with the Tuskegee Airmen. She was the operations officer for the 332nd Bomber Group, which is the all-black Tuskegee Airmen. Verda May grew up in Pasadena, California. She graduated from the local schools. She then went to Tuskegee, Alabama, to go to Tuskegee University. At that time, when she came back to Pasadena, because of discrimination, she could not get a teaching job. So she went back to Alabama, and that's when she joined this new experiment called the Tuskegee Experiment. After she joined, she went to Fort Des Moines, Iowa, which is where African-American women officers were being trained, at Fort Des Moines, Iowa. After that, she went back to Tuskegee, to Alabama. During the war, she was stateside with the 332nd. Being the operations officer, she was responsible for the day-to-day operations. She also, prior to that, had been a company commander, but she was a commander of an all-black female unit. If she were alive today, she would be so pleased that in the Air Force, there are now women pilots. She had a very close relationship with the Tuskegee Airmen, the fighter pilots, because she was with that unit. She served over 25 years. Then she returned to Pasadena and became involved in volunteer community affairs. Verda May's brother, my husband, L.B., also served in World War II. It's my understanding that they were one of the few brother and sisters who served during World War II. L.B. Hickenbottom, Verda May's brother, served in Germany and France, and he was a part of the liberation of Paris. Verda May felt very strongly that serving in the military was a privilege and an honor, and she felt very strongly that we Americans were on the right side of things.
My name is Dominic Bazzulli. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I was 17 years of age when I volunteered to become a Coast Guardsman. I joined the Coast Guard because I thought I had to do my duty. But I ended up being shipped out on the LST-16. It's a landing ship tank. We pulled in the harbor of Normandy, Omaha Beach. We pulled right up on the beach, opened the doors, and dropped the ramp, and then troops and trucks and everything get off. We received the command from head command, unload, to take over the beach, to get the troops on the beach, and hopefully they can get up in the mountain. They found out that the Germans had destroyed all roads out of the mountains. So the American troops were stranded on the beach, and the Germans were firing the 88s at them. After we unloaded the troops, we started getting off the beach. We were told, you can't leave too far. You gotta pick up survivors. So we pulled back and anchored. And we waited there to get the word to go to shore and pick up survivors, and which we did at night. The mortality rate was extremely high because they weren't able to get relief. Eventually, they did, but it took time. A lot of them died on the beach. That was the big problem. Being young, I kind of scratched it off. I figured that's war. After Normandy, we pulled in and we were told to anchor. I was very fortunate to be able to be in Japan when MacArthur signed the peace treaty. We came through and anchored in the banking area of Japan and unloaded the troops. The troops were the occupation troops. And I found, I think it may have been an uplift in me because the war was over. Having gone through the life I did, I feel today that I made the right move. Yes, I definitely felt that I made the right move in volunteering because it was for peace. You're fighting for a country that needs the help.
My name is Edward Lopez. I'm 97 years old, and I flew 100 combat missions in support of the ground troops across Europe during World War II. I was 18 years old, and I enlisted as a private in the Army Air Corps from Los Angeles, California, and went on to be a cadet in the Army Air Force. After becoming a cadet, I completed my training, primary flying, basic flying, and advanced flying, became a pilot, and was sent overseas. In 1944, I joined the 365th Fighter Group, which was stationed at that time in Reims, France. A fighter pilot is his own navigator, his own bombardier, and his own gunner. There's only one man in the airplane, and that's the fighter pilot. As the American troops advanced, they encountered heavy resistance from the Germans. Whenever they encountered a resistance they couldn't handle, they called in the P-47 Thunderbolts to soften it up for them. We were given the ground troops Hodges' First Army and Patton's Third Army. We were in the 101st Airborne. We were giving them air support. And we gave them air support during the Battle of the Bulge. During the Battle of the Bulge, the weather was so severe we couldn't even taxi our airplanes to the end of it. We had to have the airplanes towed to the end of the runway, lined up, and we took off on instruments and headed out toward the ground. Radar gave us a vector heading to the battle area. We couldn't see the ground because of the fog. Soon after joining the Hellhawks at Reims, we moved. We weren't there more than a couple of weeks before we moved into Belgium. We stayed there about 3 months. We were flying up around 20,000 feet, coming back from strafing some marshalling yards and trains, and I noticed some tanks parked next to a building. The other pilots didn't see them, or they ignored it. But I told the squadron commander, I'm going down to take a look. So I peeled off from the squadron and came down on this tanks. And before I knew it, just as I was getting in the gun range, the whole sky lit up with anti-aircraft fire. And I was right in the middle of the most intense anti-aircraft fire I've ever witnessed. Shells bursting all around me. And the airplane shook a little bit, and I looked back on my right wing, and I had a big hole. The hole so big you could crawl through it. But that airplane stayed in the air. I got out of there, pointed the airplane up, and got out of range real quick. When the war ended, we were stationed in Germany itself, Fritzlar, Germany. I received many medals during my combat, which included the Distinguished Flying Cross, 10 air medals, and a Purple Heart. Also, we had 2 presidential citations, and belatedly, I was awarded the Legion of Honor from France, which is equivalent to the Congressional Medal of Honor of the United States. And also, with that award, I was given the title of a knight. So actually, I can be addressed as Sir Edward, which kind of makes me laugh. We lost a lot of pilots during the war, and in memory of them, I say we did a good job. The main thing that I was proud of when I went to town, they called me an American. I was an American to those people, not Latin American or Mexican American or whatever. He called me American, and that's what I was proud of.
Hello, I'm General Ruth Wong, the Director of Los Angeles County's Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. This film is dedicated to the men and women who served so valiantly in World War II that may have gone unnoticed until now. Typifying the greatest diversity of our nation, our brothers and sisters proved that when we fight for one common goal, we can achieve anything. It is our hope that these stories resonate with a part of each of you. Our hope is to create a legacy of our heroes so their children, grandchildren, and future generations will remember their contribution, dedication, and sacrifice. At Los Angeles County Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, we serve those who have served. Thank you for joining us.